Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a basic beginner tutorial. So basically, if you've never crocheted before or if you have like the tiniest amount of crochet experience, this is the right video to give you a ton of tips, but also just a tutorial of like how to do the stitches, how to change colors, stuff like that. First, I have just a couple tips that like I don't need to show you anything for. The first one is that there's different terminology based on the UK versus the US. I just looked it up and it said that the UK terminology is based on the number of loops on your hook, and then the US terminology is based on the number of times you yarn over when you're like actually doing the stitch. So I'm just gonna be basing everything I'm saying on the US terms because that's what I learned. But if you're like looking up tutorials, either written or in video form, you might want to note whether it's based on the UK terminology or the US terminology, just so that you don't end up doing the wrong stitches. Literally do everything you can to make sure you're doing the right stitches, because sometimes it's just not going to turn out the right way, or it's just going to take longer than it needs to because you're doing the wrong stitch. Also, for your first few projects, I would definitely recommend getting acrylic yarn. I know a lot of people have different opinions on like what yarn you get, but I definitely feel like as a beginner, your first projects aren't going to be perfect. They're not going to be honestly stuff you want to wear a lot of the time or stuff that you like. I just feel like acrylic yarn is pretty staple. Also, normally it's about $5 at Michael's. That's where I normally go. So I feel like it's totally worth it. Also, a couple things to note on the packaging. You first of all have the weight of the yarn. Weight of the yarn ranges from 1 to 7, 1 being the thinnest and 7 being the bulkiest. I usually get about a 4. I feel like it's pretty much like standard, like medium in terms of sizing, but also that definitely for beginners, I would say get a 4 or 5, just so that the yarn isn't so thin on your hook that like you have trouble picking it up. But then once you're a little more advanced, you can go smaller, you can go bigger. Doesn't really matter. I mean, definitely for making like a blanket or something, I would recommend going with the chunkier yarn if you're first starting out. It's not like you can't start out doing bigger yarn. It's just gonna be a little bit of a learning curve if you're using a bulkier yarn or a thinner yarn, but you can definitely get used to it. This is my recommendation for what you would start off with. Also on the label, it'll say what recommended hook size it has for you. I honestly don't really follow that most of the time, simply because I have my favorite hooks, and I have sometimes like I'll size up or size down my hook depending on what I'm doing. But for this, a weight for yarn, it says 5mm. I usually do like 4.25, so I'm not like that far off. On the label for the yarn, it'll also say like what type of yarn it is. So this is acrylic, and it does just say that it's acrylic yarn. And then for this specific kind, it also has like the color name above like the weight and the hook recommendation. One tip that I have if you're first starting off, I haven't even done this because I kind of have given up because I've collected so much yarn, but one tip I have is to take a little clip from the end of your yarn, literally like a couple inches, does not need to be that much, and then to get like a notebook and tape every single yarn you get and write down the brand and the color name, simply so that you don't have to like go in the store and search for the yarn based off of like a picture you took, or even like bringing your project in and holding up different yarns trying to figure out which one it is. I've done that before, and it honestly is so frustrating because like I'm like, I know it's there but I can't find it. So if I would have done that, I feel like it would be a lot easier, but like genuinely, most of the yarn I have, I've lost the labels for, so I kind of have no clue what yarn they are anymore, but that's okay. I also would recommend getting like a little bag. This is obviously just like a random Ziploc bag, and putting in the ends from all your projects. You can use this for stuffing later on if you're making like amigurumi crochet stuff, or like, I don't know, if you're stuffing like a pillow and you've collected stuff over a long period of time. But also just like, you don't want to like waste all this yarn that you did spend money on. And like, obviously I have a decent amount here. I have some that's just like loose in the bag of yarn that I have, so I probably should add that to that pile. But it honestly is kind of helpful too, because sometimes you'll need just like the tiniest amount of yarn and you can like use that. I will also say, when I started, I got this little like crochet starter kit, and it also came like with a book of tutorials. I literally never used that book, but I feel like I didn't really know what to expect or what I needed when I started off, so some of the stuff that came in that I don't even use anymore. So the things I recommend are getting like probably like a 4mm hook, 5mm, and maybe like 4.5mm hooks if you are staying within this like range of weight 4, weight 5. For stitch markers, you can definitely just use bobby pins. I again don't really use the stitch markers that came in that package, and then I already had measuring tape, so the one that came in that, again, I don't really use. And then you do need a darning needle. All that means is that like the opening for where you'd normally put like thread in is a little bit bigger, so you can fit yarn in. The one that came in that is just like plastic, and it works completely fine. I don't see the need to get like an expensive one, but other than that, you'll definitely like figure out things over time if you decide you do need something, but like you can definitely get it eventually. I just wouldn't recommend getting it right off the bat just because like you don't really know if you need it yet. One tip I have for when you are going on and making your first project and any project in the future is to check the comments under the tutorial. Obviously this applies to videos. If it's like a vlog or something, there might not be comments, but sometimes people will find like, oh, on row 3 they forgot to mention this, or they said chain 1 but you're actually supposed to chain 2, and like you would notice these things if you were looking at the video and like paying attention enough, but sometimes it gets really confusing if like they just completely forgot to say it. So definitely make sure to make note of that. I've used that so many times where I'm confused about the tutorial. I look in the comments, people explain it. Sometimes also people write out like the entire tutorial, where in the video it's just like section by section that it has text on the screen. So generally still helpful. Also, this is kind of like mean that people do this, but people will write like, this is definitely not a beginner tutorial, don't do this unless you're advanced. Not the kindest thing, but sometimes that is kind of helpful. Like if you are a really beginner, you don't want to take on something that's like too difficult to do or like too complicated for you to really understand until you have a little bit more experience. I fully believe like beginners can make literally anything they want. You just kind of need like a little bit more knowledge sometimes for certain tutorials, or they just like move faster, so it's not going to be easy to follow along to. But I also have a couple ideas for what your first project could be. The first one is a simple just like tote bag. This was actually my first project, and I followed a tutorial by Cameron Kane. It's like the everyday tote bag. I actually messed it up because I wasn't paying attention to the yarn size recommended, and so my yarn was like a weight bigger than hers was, and so then it just like didn't turn out the same way. But I feel like her tutorial is really good. I think all you do is double crochet and maybe like a slip stitch or something like that, so it's super simple. I feel like you can definitely do it. You could also do it with like different stitches as well if you wanted to do half double crochet, single crochet, whatever, but it's just like a staple, easy, good project. I also actually later going to be recording a tutorial for the tank tops that I've made, and I feel like they're pretty basic too. It's just half double crochet and then not even slip stitch, you just have to chain 1 at the end, so really not that much. Okay, and then one more tip slash explanation is the different abbreviations for stitches. Also, when people use abbreviations that like are kind of unfamiliar, they'll usually put them in the caption, or you could just Google what that abbreviation means, but otherwise those are pretty much the standard ones. When you're holding your yarn, everyone kind of holds it different ways, and also holding your hook. Some people hold it like a pencil. I honestly just kind of like have it in my hand. I don't know, I don't feel like I'm very particular with it. Once the project gets further along, I hold it a little bit differently just because like now I'm holding onto the edge of the yarn so it doesn't like move around. But once you have like a solid project, you're not going to be holding onto the end. Then with my left hand, because I'm right-handed, so I have it flat, laid over, and then put it like in between these fingers. Again, you really will just figure out what works best for you. It took me a while to figure out what felt natural. So if you try this, it doesn't feel comfortable after a while, that's completely fine. It's not gonna work for everyone. Okay, I have a base of double crochets here just so I can have something to crochet into, and then I will go back and show you how to start off from the beginning, but right now I'm just gonna show you stitches. First, we have a single crochet. What you're going to do is go through both loops of the row below, hook the yarn onto your hook, and then pull through. Again, you're going to go through both loops here, hook the yarn on your hook, pull through, and then you're going to hook the yarn over again and pull it through both loops on your hook. We're going to do another one, go through both loops from your previous row, hook the yarn onto your hook, pull it through, and then hook the yarn again, pull through both loops. Pull through both loops, hook your yarn over, pull it through, and hook through both. Now we're going to move on to a half double crochet, and again I'm using US terms. First, instead of going through both loops like you would for the single crochet, you start by putting the yarn onto your hook, going through those 2 loops, and then what you're going to do is hook the yarn over, pull through those 2 loops, and now you're going to have 3 loops on your yarn. So again, you're going to pull the yarn over your hook, go through those 2 loops from your previous row, hook the yarn onto your hook, and pull through those 2 loops. Again, you have 3 loops on your hook. And now for the half double crochet, you pull the yarn over your hook and go through all 3. We can do another one. Pull the yarn over your hook, go through those 2 loops, grab onto that yarn and pull through 2, and then pull through all through 3 after going over your yarn one more time. So here we have 3 single crochets and 3 half double crochet. Next, we're going to move on to the double crochet, starting off just like you would for the half double crochet, pulling the yarn over your hook, going through the 2 loops, hooking the yarn again and going through 2 loops. But now is where it gets different. You're going to hook your yarn, and instead of going through all 3, you're just going to go through 2. And then you're going to pull the yarn over your hook again and go through 2. And then we're going to do it again, pulling the yarn over your hook, going through 2 loops, pulling through those 2 loops, grabbing the yarn, pulling through 2, grabbing the yarn and pulling through 2. And then we can do one more, putting the yarn over your hook, going through the 2 loops, pulling through 2, hook your yarn, go through 2, hook your yarn, go through 2. Next, I'm going to show you treble crochet and double treble crochet. They're pretty much double crochets with 1 more loop added. However, you don't really need to know these as a beginner, just if it comes up in a tutorial so you know what it is. So treble crochet, starting off, you loop the yarn around your hook twice, go through the 2, hook your yarn and pull through 2, hook your yarn, pull through 2, hook your yarn, pull through 2, and hook your yarn, pull through 2. And I'm just going to go into this chain so that you guys can see a double treble crochet. You want to go around 3 times instead, go through the 2, pull through, hook 2, hook 2, hook 2, and hook 2. So again, you can see that like upward spiral of the stitches because they get taller as you go on. Again, you really don't need to know treble crochet and double treble crochet as a beginner. Just again, if it comes up, you know what it looks like. It's not too complicated, not too different. Next, I'm going to show you a slip stitch. You usually will be doing this if you need to finish off an edge, if you are finishing off a project, if you are connecting the end of a granny square. So it's pretty much a single crochet, just a little bit smaller. So what you do is you go through those 2 loops. Again, you don't start off hooking the yarn over your hook, but this time, instead of pulling through 2 and then pulling through 2, what you're going to do is you're going to go under those loops, pull through those 2 loops, and then immediately pull through that loop. So I can just finish off this side, showing you more slip stitches. You will find that sometimes you aren't going to be slip stitching into the nice edges of stitches where it's going to have those 2 loops for you. So here I'm just going to go into the middle of the side of this stitch. So it's not going to be like the most exact spot, but it still works. So again, you go through the 2, pull the yarn through, and then pull the yarn through the loop that was on your hook. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to take this part so that we can start over and show you how to start your chains, how to change rows, all of that stuff. To start off a row of crochets, you're going to do a slip knot. I feel like everyone makes it seem so much more complicated than it is, but seriously, it's so simple. What you're going to do is you're going to grab your hook, lay it over your fingers, loop it around, and then pull through that loop you've made. And there you go. You have your knot. Take your yarn, lay it over your fingers, pull it around, and then we're going to pull through. I honestly feel like when I start projects, I just like do it like that, but I feel like that looks more complicated. You really just like make a little knot. And the point of it is so that you can just pull it out. And also, I don't know if you noticed, when I took out the rows, you do just like pull everything out. You don't have to like do it individually, which is kind of nice because when you make a mistake, you can just easily pull it apart. So anyway, starting off, I honestly normally start my rows with foundation stitches. I will show you how to do that, but it is a tiny bit more advanced, so you don't have to start off with that. You can start off with chains. That is pretty much what every tutorial is going to tell you to do. I just honestly ignore that because I'm not a fan of going into chains. So start off a chain. You're going to put your yarn over your hook, just like we did for pretty much all the stitches, and then you pull through the loop. And then to make another chain, you hook the yarn onto your hook and pull through the loop. Super simple. I think for this, again, I'll probably do about 10 wide. So what I'm going to do again, put the yarn onto my hook, pull through. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So when you're changing rows, even just when you're going into these chains, you need to add an extra chain or 2 or 3 in order to compensate for like the height of the stitches. So like when you have a block of crochets in a row, these edges are just going to be chains because it kind of makes up for that space. Otherwise it's going to start like bending and then like almost making a triangle, like not really, but it's going to start getting thinner because you're kind of missing out on that extra row. So I'm going to start off with single crochets. So what we're going to do is we're just going to chain 1. For double crochets, you're going to chain 2. For half double crochets, you're going to chain 1. And then treble crochets, I'm pretty sure you chain 3, double treble 4. Again, right now we have 11 chains on our row. And in most projects, they're going to tell you chain this amount plus 1, plus 2, etc. And basically that just means the next row you're going to do single crochets if it's plus 1, the next row you're going to do double crochets if it's plus 2. But remember that when you're counting, so if they say do 80 chains plus 2, if you don't do that plus 2, sometimes the pattern is going to end up a little bit warped because you're missing those 2 extra stitches at the end. So again, 11 chains on our hook. What we're going to do is we're going to turn our work. It's not really turning our work because it's just a chain, but that's essentially what it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through both loops and then pull through and then hook my yarn and pull through 2. And then we're going to do the same thing with these next ones. I honestly feel like when I start off with chains, it just is not going to end up looking very nice because I am really bad about like getting the right tension when it chains. So again, if you see the foundations later on in this video and you're like, yeah, that seems preferable, definitely do that instead. But I am just showing this because it is pretty much what they're going to tell you to do in any tutorial. So next, again, going through both loops, pulling through, and pulling through 2. I will say, when you're starting off your work, especially as a beginner, it's going to feel so hard to keep it steady because it's just this tiny little thing. I promise you, once you get further along in your work, it's so easy. You actually have something to hold on to. And like, if you can see, when I pull through here, I like hold it steady and pull it through. I never have to do that when my projects are further along. So it really is just the beginning step. It's not the most enjoyable, but you'll get used to it. Again, go through both, hook my yarn, pull it through, and go through 2. And then I'll join you once I finish this row. Okay, just going into my last stitch right here. You do it the exact same way, going through both, pull through, and pull through 2. Now we have one row of single crochets. So when you turn, it's going to be very similar to how you turned after your chain row. We're going to chain 1, and then turn your work. And in some projects, they're going to want you to chain 1, skip this first one, and go into the second one because they want you to go into the chain at the end. So you can go into the chain, but I honestly feel like most projects I don't go into the chain. Basically, your 2 options are skipping the first one, doing all the rest of your stitches, and going into the chain, or going into your first one, going to the end, but not going into that chain at the end. So that's what I'm going to show. Now that we have our chain, we can start our next row. We can go through 2 loops, pull through, do your single crochet, 2 loops, pull through, single crochet, and continue that for the rest of the row. So again here, because we went into this first stitch here, you're going to go into this last stitch, but you're not going to go into the chain. For our next row, we're going to do half double crochets. So again, for this, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, pull the yarn over your hook, go through 2, pull through those 2 loops, and then pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Okay, continuing with our last stitch in this row, we're going to put the yarn on our hook, go through 2, pull through, and pull through 2. And that's the end of our row because we have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then for our next row, we're going to do double crochets. So for this one, it's going to be different. You're going to chain 2, and then we're going to turn our work. Here we're just going to start off with our double crochets. Putting the yarn over your hook, go through 2, pull through, go through 2, and then go through 2. and then we're going to continue that for the rest of the row. But if you see here, we have these 2 chains, so that matches the height of the double crochet, whereas if we had only 1 chain, it would be down here. Now, we're going to reach the end of this row, and I'm going to show you how to end off your work. So now that we've had our last stitch, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1, putting the yarn under a hook, pulling through the 1 loop that's there, and then we can cut our yarn. So it doesn't really matter where you do it. It's not very sharp scissors. Cut through, and then what you want to do is pull through. And there you go. Now your work is tied off, and it's not just gonna like loosely come out anywhere. You can definitely keep practicing, literally just doing these changing rows over and over and over, and then cutting off your work. But yeah, now I'm going to show you how to change colors. So I am just gonna continue with my green yarn, and this actually kind of is another tip. Some people will make their slip stitch and then pull through like this and then start their work, start chaining whatever. I personally don't like doing that. I just don't like how the end looks right there. What I normally do is go into those 2 loops of the stitch I'm going to go into, pull the yarn through, and then I literally just tie it on with a normal knot. And so the method that I like the most is you start the stitch, pull through like so, and then you grab the edge of your next color and you completely just drop that old one. Hold this normally, pull through with it, and then you kind of gotta like wiggle it a little bit, tighten the bottom of it so it looks like a normal stitch, and then you're just going to continue on doing your single crochets. And as you can see, even though we put that pink yarn in during this stitch, it starts off with the next stitch, so it doesn't like awkwardly go halfway through. And then with the yarn of your previous color, you're going to cut it off anywhere along that edge that's like holding on to the stitch that it finished on, but I'm going to show the change with double crochets as well. Next, with half double crochets, and then you're going to start it, pull through, and then instead of pulling through your loops, you're going to grab your other yarn, and then pull through all 3 loops here. And then you do just kind of have to tighten it up there. Kind of like a back and forth, pull it tighter. And then now you can continue on with your next stitch. And then if it looks looser than you want, you can still continue pulling it a little bit tighter until you've weaved it in. Then you can't really find that spot again, but there you go. Now you've changed your color. And then we're going to do the same thing with double crocheting. You're going to go through, start off, essentially do a single crochet so you only have 2 loops left on your hook, and then you're going to grab your other color and same thing, pull through, tighten it up, and continue on like normal. And there you go. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to increase and decrease. So I'm just going to do a couple again. And then for a stitch that you want to increase into, you're literally just going to put 2 stitches into that same 2 loop spot. So I'm going to start with 1 double crochet and then doing the same thing right back into that same spot. So if you look here, when I kind of like stretch it apart, there's 2 stitches into that same spot in my next stitch, and then go into that same stitch, and now I have 2 increases right next to each other. Doing increases is the exact same for every single stitch out there, but doing decreases is a little bit different for each stitch. So again, starting off with double crochet, we're going to do a decrease, go through my 2 loops, pull through. We're going to pull through 2 loops, just like we did when we were going to change colors, except we're going to pull the yarn over our hook and go into the next stitch. So if you look here, we're in the next stitch now, pull through 2. So now we have like the base of 2 double crochets, and then we're going to pull through all 3 loops on our hook. So now you can see this is like a V, that's like an A. This is an increase, this is a decrease. We'll do 1 more, go into the next stitch, pull through 2, and then yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, and then pull through 3. Now I'm starting off a row of single crochets. So to increase, I'll show you, even though it's the same thing, go into one stitch, and then go into the same stitch with your single crochet. And then there's an increase right there. For decrease though, so you're going to go into your first stitch, pull through, and instead of going into any loops, you're going to go into your next stitch, pull through, and then pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So there's a decrease and there's an increase. We'll do one more. Go through the first one, pull through, go through the second one, pull through, and then pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And for your decrease with half double crochets, you're going to pull through like normal, pull up, now you have 3 loops on your hook, and then you're going to yarn over, go through your next stitch, pull through, and now you have 5 loops on your hook, and you want to pull through all of them. Do one more, go through, pull up, next one, pull up, and pull through all of them. And then with your next stitch, I'm going to do an increase, so pull through and go through normal, and then do one more stitch into that same spot. So we have 2 decreases and 1 increase. Now I'm going to show you how to do a magic knot, which essentially is just joining 2 separate pieces of yarn. You can do this with the same color yarn. I'm just doing it like this so that you can tell the difference in what I'm explaining. So first you're going to take this bottom one, you're going to go under the other one, you're going to loop it over, I need a little bit more, loop it over, and then you're going to go through this gap and make a knot. Pull it like that. Then with your other one, you're going to go over the second piece of yarn. You're going to loop it around the back, like so. And then you're going to go through and tie a knot. Once you've tied these knots, you kind of want to secure them pretty tight. And then you're going to pull these 2 edges. And then now you have 1 single knot. And you can pretty much just cut, I go pretty close, cut the other side, and then now you have 1 single thing of yarn even though it's 2 separate pieces. So I'm just going to cut along this so I can show you one more time. So again, with this one, you're going to go under the other yarn, we're going to loop it around and pull it through to tie. And then with the second one, we're going to go over and loop around back and tie. And then, once again, make them tight, pull it, and you can cut along these edges. Now I'm going to show you how you'd finish off your work, including weaving in your ends. So here, I'm just going to chain 1, pull through like I already said, and the yarn is already cut for this one, but normally you would cut the end. And then what you're going to do, take your darning needle, again here it has like a bigger gap in the middle so you can actually fit your yarn through it. One tip I learned that makes it so easy, instead of having to thread it through, you put it over like that, pull it off the side, and then you can kind of like wiggle it in right there. It makes it so much easier, and then you can push it through. So now that I have my yarn threaded onto my needle, there's multiple ways of weaving in your ends. A lot of people do it differently. I honestly just go for the most simple version because I feel like it works. What I do is I go through the sides of the 2 loops of my stitch, and then I come back the other direction, and I'm literally just threading it through. And then I'll do like a little bit of into the stitch out the side, just like looping it through. You kind of get to the point where the yarn is like too short on your hook to be able to really pull it through. We're not really there yet, but there we go. See how it's kind of coming off the yarn, or coming off the needle, I mean. Pull it through, and then right there, I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit and cut my yarn. You can just cut your yarn close to where you tie it off, but if you do that, it definitely can unravel, where this it's a little bit more secure. Okay, now I'm going to show you foundation stitches. Again, we're going to start off with single crochet. So you do still start off with your slip knot, put the yarn on your hook. You do actually start with some chains. You do 2 chains, but instead of continuing off with your chains and then making your next row be single crochets, what you do is you go into the side of that first chain and you do go through 2 loops, It's not your normal 2 loops because normally the 2 loops you go through are these 2, but here you're going to go through the side. So you go through those 2 loops. Then what you do, yarn over, pull through, you chain 1, and then you yarn over, pull through 2. So this is your first single crochet, and then that is your chain row. So essentially you're doing 2 rows at once. And then with your next one, you go through the 2 loops that you just created, you pull through, chain 1, and pull through 2. And then when you're changing your rows, you do it like normal, chain 1, and go in. So again, you start off with your slip knot, you're going to chain 2, and then you're going to yarn over, go through those 2 loops once again on the side. You're going to pull through 2, chain 1, and then make your half double crochet. So pull through all 3. And then next, yarn over, go through those 2, pull through 1 to make your chain, and then pull through 3. It has like a flat stitch side on both sides instead of being chains on one side. And then double crochet, pretty much the same thing. You're going to chain 2, yarn over, go through, pull through those 2, chain 1, but then you're going to make your double crochet, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Starting again, go through those 2 loops you just created, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1 to make your chain, pull through 2, and then pull through 2. Okay, for this next section, I was accidentally off screen, so I just re-recorded it and I'm going to do a voiceover. So starting how to do the magic circle, you kind of tuck the yarn around your fingers just like I'm showing, tuck the hook under the front piece of yarn and over the second, and then pull it through. Showing you one more time, wrapping it around, tucking it under, tucking it over, pulling through. And then you kind of grab at the base of where you pulled through and pull it off your fingers. And then you hold the yarn over your fingers just like normal and chain 1. And then for this, you actually will chain 2, so chain 1 more, and then you start doing double crochets into the gap. So you don't double crochet into like the base of your chains, you're double crocheting into the actual gap. So there's my first double crochet, and then I'm going to do 1 more because for this granny square we're doing like sets of 3 and the base of chains does count as a stitch. After those double crochets, you're going to chain 2 and then do 3 more double crochets into the gap. And then you can tighten it up a little bit to make it a smaller area to crochet into, but you don't want to tighten it up all the way until you reach the end of this space. So after you do those 3 double crochets, you're going to chain 2 more and then do 3 more double crochets. Essentially, each of these chain 2s is going to count as a corner, so you're going to have 4 of these sections. Chaining 2 more, and then doing 3 more double crochets. And making sure that I'm going under both the actual circle and the end, not just going under the circle. And then now we're at our last corner, so we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to go into the top chain from where we started. And to tighten up the middle of the circle, you just pull that end. And you're not going to the first one, you're going into the second one, into both loops. And then you're going to do a slip stitch. And now that's the base of your granny square. Then we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and do 2 more double crochets into the gap. So again, we're not working into the actual chains, we're going directly into the gap. And then we're going to chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets into the gap. And then after those double crochets, you're going to chain 1, and then immediately start double crocheting into the next gap. We're going to do 3 double crochets as usual, chain 2 more, and then 3 double crochets into the same gap. After this, we're going to chain 1 and then start our double crochets into the next gap. After you've done those 3 double crochets, chaining 2 once again and 3 more double crochets into the same gap. We're going to repeat this pattern, so doing 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into one gap, chaining 1, and then starting your double crochets into the next gap. And now at the end of your last gap, which you can see because you're almost reaching the beginning of where you started this row, you're going to chain 1 just like normal, but instead of double crocheting, you're going to slip stitch into the top chain of those chains that you did to start the row. Doing our slip stitch. And then there you go. If you were to finish this off, you would chain 1 and cut your work just like normal, but for each row of these, you're going to add 1 extra hole to each side. So the original row had 2 holes on each side. This row that I just did has 3 holes, and if I continued, it would be 4, 5, 6, etc. Alright, that is all for this video. I hope that this was really helpful and that you're starting your crochet journey off with a lot of knowledge, probably more than you need to do your actual first project, but I was really excited. I feel like something like this is such like a staple for starting off your crochet journey, and hopefully it's nice to have it all in one video instead of having to search a video for like each thing that you want to look into. But of course, if anything's confusing, you can look up another tutorial, you can ask me questions in the comments, and I will try my best to help. Make sure to check out my TikTok, my Depop, my Etsy, all the things. I do sell crochet stuff on my Depop and my Etsy if you want to check it out. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!